Hey guys, this is Chandler Vincent with weldermade.com. Welcome back for the month of April. Let's check out this aluminum project we got for you this month. I'm super excited. Let's see if we can't learn something today. So let's start off by looking in the right hand corner. Let's look at all of our parts. Make sure we have the right parts, the right quantity of parts, and we understand which ones go where, and that will help us in the tacking process, understanding what parts go where. So we'll start off with part number one. There's only one part. It is the base plate. That is a 7x8 rectangle. And then number two is this odd looking shape right here. It's a lot similar to part number four, but part number four and part number two are just the same shape, just mirrored, and one's a little smaller than the other. Okay, so for part three, 6-inch pipe. Part four is that smaller piece that's a lot like number two. And then number five, you can see down there in the bottom left hand side of the blueprint, part number five is that whole side of the blueprint, and it's basically parts 2 and 4 put together. And then 6 is 2.5 by 5.5 rectangle. There's 2 of them, should be exactly the same. And those are part 6. So part 7 is the big plate with the Welder Made logo. And then part 8 is the rectangle with the round radius cut out of the corner that will butt up to the pipe. And then 9 is the thinnest little rectangle you have. It's 5.5 inches wide, and it's the thinnest part we have. I don't think it dimensions it on the blueprint. Let's see. So pretty close to 3/4 inches thick. And then that's 9, so 10 is the rectangle that is slightly thicker than part 9. It's 5.5 inches wide, and I've got 1.3 on my calipers wide. Okay, for parts 9, 11, and 10, you have a small, medium, and a large. Your largest rectangle in that set's 11, and then 10's your medium, and 9 is your thinnest rectangle. Those pieces are for the assembly that go on the top of the parts that go on top of the assembly. I'm going to clean all that dross off the back side with my grinder, and then I'm going to lightly touch all of my cut faces, clean them up nice, and then when I'm done with that, I'm going to wipe all my parts down with acetone to get all of the surface oils and grease and contaminants off the parts, and then we will go into the tacking up process. So I'll be back with you in just a minute. I'm going to get these parts cleaned up, and we'll go from there. Alright, now that those parts are clean, I'm going to lay out my base plate. If you look at the overhead view, we are 1 inch away from the edge of the base plate to the edge of the assembly on the one side, and then we're 1 inch and 3/8 on the other side, 1.375. So I'm going to lay that out on my calipers and mark that real quick. Okay, now that that's laid out, we are good to start tacking up our project. So I'm going to transfer over to our Easy Tack tool, and we will start tacking up. We're going to tack everything up on the same plane first, just like normal, and then we will go to the Easy Tack and start tacking up the assembly. Let's do it. Alright everybody, now that we are ready to tack up, let's start tacking everything that's on the same plane. We'll start with parts 4 and 2, and then we'll tack up the set of part 6. Okay, here goes parts 4 and 2. Okay, now you have your 2 parts number 6 that will be tacked together for a horizontal butt joint. That is everything we can do on the same plane. So now we're going to go over to the easy tack. Alright, so we're starting with part number 5 and part 7 with the logo. So transfer them over to the easy tack. Okay. Now we're just going to rotate it over, and we're going to tack on our set of 4 and 2 to part 7. Okay, so now that we have this assembly put together, you can see that this leg is longer than this leg, and that's because our pipe's going to be sitting in there. So we're going to rotate it to part number 5, the solid big piece. We're going to get that on the easy tack. We're going to clamp that in there, and you're going to tack your 2 6s to where the butt joint's in the horizontal position, and you're going to tack that up as a nice corner joint. Take your time on this tacking up stage and make sure those joints are as perfect as possible. That'll help you in learning as efficient as possible. So the more consistent you can be with your fit up, the more consistent you can be with your welding. And in industry, you don't always have a perfect fit up, but when we're trying to learn, it's best to start with a perfect fit up so you can have the consistency of practice and have efficient practice. Okay, now our 6s are on there. You're going to naturally think that those need to come together for a corner joint, but that's where part number 3 is going to slide in, that pipe. So now we're going to go and get part number 8, which has the radius cut out of the corner, and we're going to tack that in right here with parts 6 and part 5, and then that'll give us an area to put our pipe, and then that'll completely tack up the outside diameter, well, the outside of the project, and then we can start bridging everything on the top. Now we can line up all of our joints. Okay, that leaves that outside corner open for part number 3, which is the pipe, and that's going to slide right in there. So that's perfect. We're going to leave that aside for now, and we're going to bridge across the top here with part 11, and we'll work our way all the way over and across to part 9. Okay, now that that's in there, I'm going to slide part 10 in there. Okay, now all we got is part 9, the long skinny piece. That's going to go right on the top here. A couple of my tacks are in the way, so I'm going to clean those up. Okay, now that this whole assembly is tacked together, I'm going to wait to tack on part 3 until our assembly is on our base plate. So I'm going to start tacking our assembly onto the base plate. So I already laid out the marks. Just going to line those up, and the main focus is making sure this bottom corner joint you're going to have to weld has a nice fit up. Everything's looking good, so I'm going to put a tack on this outside corner. Okay, now that our assembly is on our base plate, I'm going to tack in the final piece, which is the pipe, part number 3. Okay, we're all tacked together. I'm going to go over all my tacks with the wire brush and all my joints, just make sure it's nice and clean, and then we'll start welding. Okay, we are all tacked up, all clean. I just want to make sure that you guys understand that keeping these parts clean and having precise tack up and accuracy when fitting up these assemblies is really important, because it helps the consistency of your practice. Make sure the fit up on these projects are the best that you can get them, that all the joints are nice and tight. With all these precise laser cut parts, you shouldn't have any gaps, you shouldn't have anything unsquare. So just take the time in the prepping and the tacking section to make it to where your welding, you get more practice out of your welding and you're more efficient in your practice. Okay guys, I am using a 332 4043 filler wire. I'm running a roughly 250-200 amps. I am using a foot pedal, so I will be running a little bit colder on the vertical members, but on the fillet welds, like on the base or on the base plate, I'll be using every bit of that 250 amps. So I'm going to start with all my horizontal joints. I'm going to start with this butt joint, and I'm going to weld all these horizontal skewed fillets and outside corner joints, and then we will weld all of our verticals and tie everything in. Just focus on being consistent, getting rid of any weld defects like porosity, undercut. Try to match weld size. You should be around 1/8 of an inch on your fillet welds. You should have a nice full radius contour on your corner joints, and try to be as consistent as possible and try to get the most practice out of it. Try to keep the base plate flat on the table, and we'll go from there. Let's get welding. I'm excited. I want to make sure you guys are getting these projects tacked up. That is one of the harder parts. So these videos are designed to help you guys get them tacked up and give you some general knowledge on starting the welding process. We will be making chalk talk videos where we explain the welding processes and the different techniques, and we'll go more in depth in the welding process. These videos, I want to make sure that my subscribers are getting these projects, making sure they understand how to get them tacked up, and to where they can get practicing at home. So let's get started. Okay, now I'm going to go straight up to this outside corner. Now this skewed fillet on the top, I don't think that's going to be enough filler wire, so I'm going to grab a new piece. Okay, now this bottom fillet. Get my TIG finger that I got from Jody at Weldmonger store. These things are super handy. Okay, now I'm going to go to this other skewed fillet that's connecting parts 9 and 10 together. Now I'm going to do the outside corner here that's connecting parts 7 and 9. Okay, that is all of our horizontal joints and all of our flat joints. Now we can tie all those in by simply doing and welding all the vertical pieces, and then starting to tie them all together and covering up all those stop starts. That way we only have a few craters at the end of the project. Okay, that's all my vertical corners. Now I'm going to do my vertical fillet welds up part 3, which is the pipe. Okay, now for the vertical side of part 3. Okay. Now we're good to weld all the way across the top assembly on both sides. I'm going to split the welds right in the bottom of this crevice, and I'm going to make sure I travel in the uphill progression on these 45-degree angles. So right at the middle of that crevice, I'll have welds going different directions. I forgot this vertical butt joint. We should have welded that a little bit before. I'm going to weld it now. It's not too late, so I'm going to weld the vertical butt joint. I do not suggest cutting your wire in half like this. It's kind of a waste of material because you have 2 studs at the end instead of just 1, and you don't get the best use of your wire. But I have an overhead camera that filler wire likes to hit, so I cut mine in half just so I don't hit that camera. Okay, now I'm going to finish off with this outside corner and then wrap the fillet weld around the pipe, and then we are done with the top of our assembly, and all we got to do is weld the base. That's fully welded on the whole top half of the assembly. Now I'm going to start with the overhead corner, and then I'm going to wrap all the way around and weld the whole assembly to the base plate, and then we're done. Okay, now for the fillet weld all the way around the base. This weld joint naturally wants more amperage than anything else, and I'll tell you why. So a fillet weld naturally needs more heat than, say, like an outside corner joint. And I'll tell you why specifically on this base plate. Because this base plate's flat on the table, and this table is touching the whole surface of the base plate, allowing heat to transfer out of the base plate and into your table. So that sucks heat out of your project, which is a good thing for heat management, but you also need to know that you need a little bit more amperage when welding something that is directly flat on an object that can absorb the heat out of it. So that's why you guys are probably struggling on the fillet welds on the base plates, is because you're not welding quite hot enough to get the weld to soak in there the way it should be. And so I bet you just need a little bit more amperage on these bottom fillets. Whew, that got a little warm. Don't be afraid to stop and restart, especially with TIG, because it's a lot easier to perform a good restart. Make sure you're comfortable. If you're getting uncomfortable, either try to move while you're welding or just flat out stop. Don't waste that weld joint practice. Resituate, get comfortable, and try again. Okay, we are welded all the way, and I'll tell you, that is one fun project. There's a lot of weld inches of practice on this. That pipe throws in some extra challenges on the vertical fillets and welding around. I really like that. We have a good combination of horizontals and verticals and flats. We have a lot of fillet welds, corners. I really like that project. If you have been a subscriber for a while and these are getting maybe a little bit too repetitive, a little boring, try challenging yourself by then making sure all these corner joints and butt joints are full penetration, and try to get full fusion into the back side of the project. And that opens up a whole level of challenges when it comes to heat management, because your amperage is going to be higher to get more penetration, and the overall project starts to get a lot hotter. And that way it helps you learn heat management a lot, and it helps you learn how to rig that weld pull and make sure it's sunk into that back side. You're getting full pen. That'll give you a little bit more challenge. Make sure you guys are measuring your fillet weld size. Make sure you're within an 1/8 to 3/16 on your fillet weld size. Try to get your corner joints a full radius contour. Try to get those welds nice and shiny and not dull and oxidized. Make sure your project is really clean, your fit up's good, and try to get the most practice out of this project as possible, because that's why we're doing it. We're here to learn. If you're getting uncomfortable, reset, and don't waste any of these valuable weld inches of practice. And if you're struggling in an area, make sure you push yourself in challenging yourself to weld these joints in the vertical position to get the most practice out of this as you can. So thank you for being here. I enjoy doing this with you guys. I cannot wait to launch our Chalk Talk videos, where we will be going more in depth in the welding process. But for now, thank you. Thanks for being a Welder Made subscriber, and we'll see you next month.